Hey everyone, let's get started. All right, few more seconds to go. So I will this session I'll try to be very brief. I'm looking at around 15-20 minutes for the entire session, and probably after that I'll take the questions. I'm going to start with three random points. And the first point is that, and these points are essential for your, the last 6 months. And the first point is that you cannot be superficial or you cannot be silly. And these points are not often discussed, so I thought it might be of relevance. So what I mean by that is that you cannot be superficial or you cannot be silly is that, you look at the exam, right? So if you look at the exam, it's very important to realize that it's an extremely tough exam. And if it makes you depressed, I think actually that's sort of okay. I would rather have you, especially the Marrow users, depressed right now than after the exam. So the odds are generally stacked against you. So let's say you are targeting 5,000 rank, and there is around 1.5 lakh students who are writing the exam. You're pretty much trying to be one among or top 3 or top 5 among the all the students who are writing. So imagine a batch of 100 and you are striving to be the top 5. That too, top 5 itself is not that great of a rank, right? So you're going to be you're wanting to be a 5 out of 100, right? So this is a reality. I want you guys to actually have it because last year I have seen scenarios where this reality was not there much, and you might think being above average is good. So the simple reality here is that being above average won't cut it, right? It's not simply good enough. So that is one thesis you need to always keep in mind. So this actually means that you need to have sort of edge when it comes to the exam or what you are going to answer. If you don't have an edge, if you're ending up in the 70th percentile, still it is not good enough, right? So it's as good as not doing it at all. So it's a harsh reality, but I would rather have you guys appreciate that. And that's actually one of the reason, of course, you know that, right? Marrow always have tougher questions, always have more content. So since this is always a, we keep getting question is that I'm not able to finish it, I'm not able to do it. See, you just have to, right? You need to figure out a way, right? That's the ultimate reality. We cannot sugarcoat this fact, right? So you cannot do it, right? So it's a competitive exam, and it's as simple as that. The more edge you have, the more likely you get a rank, right? So you cannot be superficial. You cannot be even just under superficial. You just have to have a depth. You just have to have some extra edge, right? And the second point is that you cannot be silly. That obviously what I'm referring to is that you cannot be making silly mistakes. You cannot be not answering the very easy, very fundamental questions. You cannot be not focusing on the extremely repeated questions or the previous year questions. So this is something, it's kind of obvious, but I think I might want to reiterate. The second point I want to make is that 6 months is a good time. Now, a few months back, November, I'm pretty sure you will look back to this day, this month, and some of you might at least think, hey, had I been slightly better prepared, if I was not wasting my July and August, I would have been in a much better shape. So we have a good around 160 days. It's actually quite a reasonably very respectable frame of time, especially how volatile these subjects are, right? So this is a really good time. I'm not saying it's just enough for anything, right? It's a really, really good chunk of time. We'll discuss how to make use of it, but you just have to realize, a few months down the line, you can't say this word again, right? So if you are in October, you can't say, I have that really good chunk of time. Only today, maybe tomorrow, you can say I have 160 days or 170 days, which is a really, really good chunk of time. So just be very aware of that. And the third point is that data, which is connected to the second point. This, again, through observation, I just realized that the time or whatever data, whatever you have, you're not putting into a number which you can actually track. I'll give you one example. You're studying your full day, right? Now, if you literally make an Excel or even a paper and write, every hour which you study, right? So let's say I'm writing 30 minutes. So say I started 8:30 to 9:30. I studied say 45 minutes. If you start writing it down, so from 9:30 to 10:30, I only studied 15 minutes. If you start putting all of your efforts into data, like this is my GT score. My GT score is 58%. Then it has moved to 62%, but my percentage is right. If you actually start putting data specifically into the time, you will be there for a shock, right? So you will be realizing that the chunk of time which I will be, at least a lot of you will be realizing that I have 6 months, but the 6 months is so fragmented, right? So I'm fooling myself. So the value of data is that once you have data out there, you will realize that you have created a persona which is fooling yourself, saying that I've been studying all day, but I'm not able to finish. But some others are finishing, I'm not able to finish it. I mean, I don't have time. Essentially, you don't get a real output of your one day, right? So if you look at, am I getting 10 hours of solid study out of a day? That's a question you need to ask, right? So 3 points I want you to keep in mind before we go into the rest of the stuff. This is the rest of the stuff. Thanks to all the YouTube lives and everything, I don't think it's not a secret anymore. Everybody has information. We just wanted to focus these 3. Right now, let me get into what you are right now, right at this point of time. Now, I know it's a very tough phase generally in your life, and every year there is something or other, right? So there is this exam, that exam. Something makes it more complicated, and I don't know. It happens. Even when I was writing, it happened, right? So now negative marking was there 1 year. This was year exam. Something will happen. So it's going to be a very tough time, and you are actually trying to manage something extremely tough in your tough time. And so I would imagine, let's say this is today. If you guys are here, so your next stop is this. And your final stop is the exam, right, which is in Jan. This next stop which I have written here is the AIMS exam. Okay. And I want all the Marrow users to take the AIMS exam. I don't think anybody should, whatever the stage of preparation you are, you should never miss the AIMS exam. Now, at this stage, depending on when you started the exam, a lot of people would be doing revision here. This would be a last revision. Then some of would be doing another set of revision here. Some of them would be in multiple revisions here. So this could be revision 1, revision 2, revision 3, which could start as early as August, right? So this is it. I mean, the specific timelines depend on when do you start, when have you started, right? And prior to this, you might have spent a significant amount of time. A lot of you might not have spent any time on building the base or preparing for this big journey, right? And if you watched my previous video, all of your effort so far, or the continuing effort, is actually for this part, which is the revision, right? So this is what you're preparing for. You're not preparing for the exam, right? So you're preparing for the revision. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys actually have that in mind. So now the scenario is that retrospectively, how well you have prepared. I would divide usually into 3. Some who have done a decent level of preparation. When I say decent, you have certain level of confidence. You are able to answer a lot of questions. You are scoring quite decent in your grand test. You finished most of your subjects once. You made decent notes, right? And of course, it's not 100% perfect, but I assure you, if you have something of that sort, it's a good going. You are in a good shape. The second group of students, I would assume 40-50% of subjects are, they have watched the video or attended a class and made notes. They solved some of the Q bank, but a lot of things are pending, right? So you really can't figure out the time to have 100% closure. And the third group, of course, is that no conscious effort until now, sort of starting now, or maybe has started a few months back. So there's no single answer for this at this point of time, but those who are in the first category, you have the highest risk, right? So you have the highest risk because you've been following a great trajectory that it's almost like, if a batsman is doing well in first, second, and third match, there's always a chance that he might screw up in the fourth one. So similarly, you've been having a good trajectory, And now for you to really pace up for the 6 months, it's gonna be a different set of challenge, right? So you already have the base. Now for those who are in the middle, can you make it full screen? Those who are in the middle, you guys have better position because you don't have much to lose, but you actually have more to gain. And those who are in the last, obviously it's a tough game for you. If luck is on your side, and if you manage to, you have a strong basics from your MBBS days, luck is on your side, and you put your 100% effort, the third group can have potentially can have a great outcome. Now let's look at the first group, right, who already have a good going, and the second group. So all of you guys, it's about accelerating, right? So you're starting to start consolidating what you have started studying. Probably you might have, I'm pretty sure you might have made all the notes. Use the notes, start revision, right? So you end up the revision. Just make sure you mark a date for the revision. This is very important because this is your hard stop. When I say hard stop, that everything stops here. So if you don't have enough time, you might want to cut down the time allocated for the pending subjects and achieve the revision. The golden rule of revision is always 60-40, like 40% of your overall preparation time goes for revision. If you're starting much later, this can be tweaked into 70-30. So the category 1 and the category students, you mark a date for the revision. Others, I will come to that later. You mark a date for the revision and start the revision. So essentially revision means reading your notes, right? So there is no fooling around there, right? So the revision is actually notes. Ideally try to do 2 to 3 cycles of revision. Again, there is no golden rule here. You can optimize for yourself. But the revision means whatever you have actually gathered as information, you actually basically look at the notes. Now this is why I mentioned as a silly, right? So repeated revisions like this would make sure that you're not making any silly mistakes, or you are not being silly, right? So you're not being silly to completely ignore a topic which is quite popular or obvious. At the same time, around 20% of the time during revision, you can actually accommodate for solving the MCQs. This again, so again you can actually put 80-20, right? So 20 would be solving the MCQs, 80 is actually the multiple revisions of your note. These revisions actually has to have happened very fast, but you have to make sure, that's again very tricky thing, you have to make sure you sort of remember everything and read everything, and you sort of go into that revision mode. The only other thing you need to do during this revision is actually check the grant test, which I'm pretty sure most of you are doing already. The grant test during revision, the last few months, the grant test will be of a different style. Right now, if you're using the Marrow grant test, you would have noticed that most of the grant tests are from the Q bank, so that you have more incentive to keep reading the Q bank. In the future grant tests will have more fresh questions, so that's going to test your extrapolation or your detection skills and add some knowledge as well. Also feel free to take other grant tests, Bhatia, DAMS or whatever. You can actually take other grant tests. In fact, I would strongly recommend you to start taking other institute grant tests much earlier in the cycle, because if you're studying Marrow, we all look at same kind of content, similar content, and we've been working. So there's always a likelihood of bias that you can always answer our questions well, right? You might be in a rude shock when you go and write something, say DAMS, CBT or GT. So that's always recommended to go and do, and just don't do it in the end month. If possible, do it as early as possible. All right. So that's up to you. When you reach the revision. So now let me take the 3 components of Marrow and sort of touch it quite fast, and let me start with the videos. Now the time you're going to spend for video is going to come down, and obviously you won't be able to finish videos if you start right now, but the goal is, it's not about the finishing the videos, right? If you feel it's required, you watch it, otherwise you skip it. And you might have seen the optional videos. It essentially says that you can choose not to watch it if you are pressed for time. And to make it very clear, right, so optional videos doesn't mean it's not important, right? So you might not need a video explanation to really understand optional videos. Now videos do not use for revision. Now there are exceptions. There are people who scored really well who actually have used videos for revision, but as a general rule, video is not your revision tool, right? So once it is done, it's done. And in fact, video is actually, you just watch it, you gain the concept, you write it down, and that's it, right? So then you actually go and look at the notes. Optional videos, you can skip. Easy, familiar subjects, you can skip. That's all about the videos. But I think maybe for the next 1 or 2 months, you might want to continue watching the videos. But please, cut down the video watching duration over the last few months, and of course, focus on the revision. Now, coming to the most important factor is the Q bank. Now, let me clarify. Q bank has 18,000 MCQs, right? So plus or minus, 5%. And the question we always get is that, how can I solve it, right? So how can I solve all of this? Now let me do the math, right? If you take 1 minute for each Q bank MCQs, you're looking at 18,000 minutes, right? So which is equal to 300 hours. And if you're studying 10 days, you can finish in 30 days. I'm not saying it's possible, but I'm saying is that the third point, right? So once you put data into a lot of these things, if you're really studying 10 days, 10 hours a day, and you have a focus to finish per minute, then you should always ask, why am I not able to finish it? Let's take it 2 days, then again you're looking at 60 days to finish. You take 3 minutes, you're looking at 90 days to finish it, right? So Q bank forms the very important fact, one of the most important functional part of your preparation. Q bank being an active as well as a passive, being a learning as well as a practice product. The Q bank forms a very functional part. Now, Q bank is an exception during revision. If you haven't finished Q bank, you can continue doing the Q bank even during the revision, right? I'm making this statement again, going back to the first one, right? While your revision will make sure that you're not making that fundamental, silly, must-know mistakes, the continuous use of Q bank is going to give you some extra edge, right? It's going to lift you from being very superficial. It's going to lift you from being 80% good. Do you think 80% good makes sense? No, 80% good doesn't make sense, right? I mean, that's unfortunate, harsh reality, but not many people acknowledge it. If you acknowledge it, you're going to, rise to the 90th percentile, right? So that the top 10 percentile. So Q bank, we should keep doing it. You can add points from Q bank to your notes. And as I said, during revision, you're going to focus primarily on your notes. But if you haven't finished your Q bank at that point of time, still spend time to keep solving the Q bank. The 70, 30 or 80% of the time on notes and then on the MCQ. Now in the Q bank, do not underestimate the Q bank, right? So since it's a mobile app, it might be tempting to, assume that it's easy or anything, but there's a lot of content, right? So, imagine somebody who has started in January, they would have comfortably finished it 2 to 3 times. And I know because we look at the backend data, and I can clearly see that there are people who can easily finish it, who are easily finishing it. And I'm pretty sure the biggest reason is that they have discipline and they're tracking the data. Now, coming to Q bank, one important factor I want to make you understand is that Q bank will have surprises, right? So even if you watch an entire hour of video and do the equivalent Q bank, you're surprised to be shocked. Okay, it's meant to be like that. It's a supplementary information. It's not a complementary information, right? So you watch your video and there is some overlap, and Q bank adds to the rest. So just don't be heartbroken when you watch a video and then you solve a Q bank and you can answer 100% of it. If you are going to be so fragile, I'm pretty sure even the real exam, practically 50% of the questions will be fresh for you, right? So I would say 50, 56, 40% of questions are going to be kind of fresh for you in a way or another, right? So Q bank is supposed to be supplementary. Now my second point, so one is the Q bank, look at the data. So if you keep looking at the data, you will know you can finish Q bank and when you can finish QBank. Second, QBank makes you, gives you depth and the extra edge. And that's why you can sort of use in revision, right? And the third point which I said is this: it is supplementary. So do not expect everything. I mean, one of our phenomenal teachers, they bring in the conceptual explanation, but just sheer the time limitation. And even Marrow, we do the maximum content. We try to deliver the maximum content for you via the videos, but right, it's still impossible to deliver all of them. So that's why the QBank actually, in addition to that, it also comes in. Now I want to touch on custom modules. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are already using it, but generally use custom modules during revision. Custom module is simple. You can build use cases like, I want to study all everything related to anti-epileptic drugs or CNS, from the pharmacology, from the medicine. You can choose topics from each subject, each specialty. You can choose hashtags like image only. So those who keep asking image questions, it's already there. You can just use the image hashtag. Previous aims, previous NEET PG, numbers, comments, whatever you want, you can actually make a criteria and do it. You can also use the bookmark questions. You can also use the questions you mark wrong, but this is the point, right? It's like your Instagram stories or WhatsApp stories, or it is ephemeral, right? You don't need to really worry about it. Do not worry about it, right? There is no history. It's just, it's just done. You just open, do casually 10 or 20 questions, that's done. I won't even recommending adding points to your note or searching for your notebook while doing it. The custom module is a beautiful feature. You're just relaxing. You have a choice between opening your Facebook and custom module. You open the custom module, make a custom module of 10, and you kind of familiarize and make fun of it, right? And once it is done, it's gone. You create another one and do it. There are two scenarios where you need to in purpose use the custom module, which is one, or make sure even if you have completed the QBank, hashtag recent NEET, right? This contains all the last 2 years and some additional recent NEET questions which are similar to the patterns. Last 2 years, because after the prometric multi-day exam change, the NEET exam pattern has changed, and this is what really represents what is a NEET. And I'm quite certain that this is it's comprehensive, it's well thoroughly structured, and we have to put a lot of effort into creating this previous NEET question. So in custom module, make sure you solve hashtag NEET. You can also use the NEET PG recall test. So we will be bringing it back so that you can resolve it, all the previous NEET PG recall tests. So previous year NEET question, do not wait until the last end of the moment to do it. You just casually start doing it, so then your brain will actually subconsciously start understanding it. Second one is actually hashtag aims, right? And the use case is just before aims. And just before aims, you should be just solving it. And the beauty is that you're not going to keep any record of it, right? You just keep solving it. So this is why custom module is important. And of course, if you are a person who finds problem stuff, you can use it. Now coming to the third is the test. I think it's no-brainer. You sort of keep doing the GTs and keep tracking the score. It's going to be very tough. You're going to plateau. Most of you is going to plateau at one score and 1 percentile. But you just work harder, right? So it's not an end of anything, but GT, and if you look at the third point which I said, right, look at the data. Just don't do GT and leave it there. Just go and look at your score and your percentile and compare it with your previous one. Now if it is not actually improving, it's actually a wake-up call. So maybe you are being superficial, maybe you are being silly. Whichever it is, go and analyze and correct it, right? So GT, you can sort of ignore all the subject-wise tests. I mean, it's just there for the legacy reasons. I wouldn't do the subject-wise test. I mean, if you are in the process of doing it, please, that's not an issue. Coming to the final point is, and I'll take the questions. So let me take a few questions in between. All right, I'm scrolling up talk, right? Is Marrow Plan B enough? I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I don't think anyone can say anything is enough. But I have certain data to say that it gives you a very good base. So in an ideal scenario, I would assume that you would need the videos as well as the plan B, because see, as I said, right, it's in a competitive exam. If you're looking to get an above average score, a distinction, it's all fine, right? So if you're getting a competitive advantage, the videos and the QBank combination works best. Because the kind of teachers we have, the level of depth and the knowledge they bring in, there are two factors. One is that they have the sheer clinical, practical wisdom and experience, and second is that they've been following this exam for years, right? So they bring a certain level of, they say this is very important. This is often asked. You add that to your active practice QBank, but if you don't have, you just have QBank, I think that would say, and I would also say, being done anything else, I would also say QBank alone would be a best option. Let's say if you only have 3 months, I think you should consider just doing the QBank than doing anything fancy. How to balance not reading and MCQ solving? As I said, during your revision, it's all about your notes, but before that, you can you can watch the videos and solve the MCQs. That's one method, or you watch the videos at a go and solve all these MCQs later. So I would assume almost 60% time of a subject spent to the videos and 40% of the time to the QBank. Reliable source of AIMS and NEET questions, it's in Marrow. Use the hashtag, use the recall exam, right? There will be two methods. One is the custom module, and second would be there will be AIMS recall exams, there will be NEET PG recall exams. Just take those exams. And if you have solved Marrow QBank, you would have definitely solved the last 3 years plus NEET exam and almost last 4.5 years worth of AIMS questions, if you have just completely solved the QBank. Now, how to focus on the AIMS? It's very simple. As I said, right, I would request all of you to write AIMS. So maybe 4 weeks prior to the AIMS exam, it sort of forms a mini revision for you. So you forget everything and then you say, I'm preparing for the AIMS. The first step is to do a last previous year MCQs of AIMS. This will give you a clarity on what is actually asked and what are the high yield topic for AIMS once you do these MCQs. And then you can just do a quick revision, and you'll be surprised that you can actually do a revision in 2 weeks, right? That's actually one of the key reason I request everyone to do AIMS. It's not just about the writing the exam, it's about the preparation for the exam of the last 2 weeks. It just gives a lot of flexibility, freedom, and it just gives you a lot of insight that how fast you can actually relearn and read, right? And this same knowledge you can actually use for your future revision and a couple of days before the NEET exam. So let me clarify, I want all of the Marrow users to write the AIMS exam, but write in a very serious manner and allocate a couple of weeks specifically for AIMS to prepare for AIMS, because that preparation, that revision itself is going to help you for the future exam. And of course, AIMS, you have a very fair chance of getting a good score. Marrow pearls, right? See, Marrow pearls, all of the pearls are attached to certain MCQs. So I kind of believe, yes, it is very important. It's sort of a last minute thing also. There are a lot of tables, there are a lot of images. So yes, I would strongly recommend Marrow pearls. That's sort of in the end of the year. I'm pretty sure you would have gone through it during your preparation. Another thing is, of course, the bookmark MCQs. Different people have different strategies. So bookmark MCQs, whatever you have bookmarked, this is a good time to start during the revision, and do the final days is actually a great time to start using it. Right, now I want to go to the one video discussion for a grand test. I don't think we have time for that. PGI out of scope at this point. There are errors in answer in QBank. I kind of disagree. I mean, of course, nobody can be error proof. But what happens is that, so we get so much feedbacks and reports and everything, we consistently check. So what you might see as an error is somewhere else it is written as something. So these are very edge controversial questions. I don't think you need to worry so much about it. I can blindly say at this point you can sort of trust the Marrow, whatever is given, and go for it. We do work with faculty and make sure they also validate it. And let's say someone says that in EAD this is not a right question. If ma'am says that, we proactively go and change it as well. So by as a rule of thumb, you can just use it. Okay, now how many correct number of MCQs? I would say in an okay, so I would say it doesn't matter. We're going to answer most of the 300, 280, 300 questions. As long as you are starting to score below anything above 700, that's a good sign. So you should have a target like, I want to score 700, 750 like that. And if it is magical, you can go to 900. But see, in the repeat exams, it's quite easy because you already have the QBank access. But I'm talking about the real NEET PG pattern models which you are actually putting. Now I want to come on to the final point, right? So we discussed. Let's quickly revise certain points, right? You cannot be superficial. You cannot be silly. 6 months is a really good time, and you should not repent coming back late. And the final thing is that this is the moment you start looking at data, right? So you're saying, I cannot finish it. Can I finish it? Rather than asking me, you just chart it down and go for it. And I think I usually keep saying this. So the most fundamental factor, most important variable in all of this is basically how you manage yourself. So I would like to take a few seconds to reiterate that itself, because this is the only variable which you can really control, right? The time is something you cannot control. How much you studied in an MBBS you cannot control. But what you actually can do, you can definitely control. One of the factor would be the time, and next factor would be the data. The third would be the distractions. The time factor, as I said, the 6 months, if you have a solid plan to spend 10 to 12 hours, and if you can actually track that and efficiently use that, this is going to be really helpful. The data point is also valuable if you actually can look at to say improve yourself, right? So for example, how many MCQs how many grant tests to take every month, right? For some people the answer is 1, for some is actually 1 every week. This only you can actually optimize for yourself, right? That's what you actually want to look at the data. You see that when I take a grant test, this is my outcome, I'm doing good, and even if I'm taking after 1 month, I don't care, and I have the confidence of sitting solidly for 3 hours, then it's not an issue. But if you are a person who really finds it hard to sit still and take a grant test, then maybe you need more time, right? This is only you can figure it out by looking at how you are performing and then finding an answer for you. So a lot of things which we are going to which we have discussed, right? So it's very publicly available information. These are the things we don't need to reinvent the wheel. For example, revision. For example, making notes. When I was preparing, most people never used to actually make notes. But now it is quite obvious that you can't really get through this without making a notes, right? By doing your notes, or I don't know, print your notes. So that's something which is proven, right? It's going to be sort of universal. Now these are the things we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but the vast majority of the things, right? How many revisions, when to start the revision, how many grant tests, should I do MCQs only, should I, all of these questions are actually based on your strength and weakness, which you can actually analyze by looking at what you're doing and sort of writing it. The third point is distraction, essentially the next versus NEET. I'm pretty sure if you are so worried, it's a good point to actually ask yourself, isn't it wishful thinking? Am I trying to fool myself by just asking this question that, is the exam pattern going to change? 99.9% it's not going to change, and even if it changes, then what's the point, right? So it doesn't matter, right? So if you are succumbing to getting influenced by distractions, if you are having a temptation to maybe go after a very tough question and spend hours on it, if you have a real passion to ask a very particular question and to make sure that you get an answer only from that faculty, then you need to stop and ask yourself, is this a good strategy? Am I fooling myself? Is this a distraction strategy? Am I getting negatively influenced, right? So that's the third point. It's all you, which you actually control. And the third point is the negativity, which I again keep saying is that you're going to be having a lot of negative people around, thoughts around. You just need to stay away from that. You cannot avoid, you literally need to avoid them. You cannot just listen to them and then feel that I won't feel negative. If you listen to them, you will feel negative. Now, so you need to build a shield around you at least for the next 6 months, so that you just stay off all of these distractions plus the negativism. And the most important, the very wrong way to is actually called motivation. It's not a package to give, right? So what is the essence of a motivation? So this is my last point. The last point is that you need to be motivated. Now, essentially, what is motivation, right? So I don't know if you guys remember our Doctor's Day message, and this message was something which is strongly based on hope, right? When I was actually doing the exam, it was very tough for me to get motivated by thinking that I would get rank, say, 300, right? That was not my motivation, right? So it was very direct, and it was not very attractive. I get 300, so what, right? My motivation was actually, if I get 300, what could I do, right? I mean, what is the big thing I'm actually looking forward? I had my personal goals, and I always wanted medicine, and I liked, the critical care, the ICU. So I was sort of looking forward to that. I always envied the PGs, and I always wanted to go back to the college, and I always wanted to take ownership of things. I always wanted to make changes. So there are sort of things which you actually have it inside you. So those are the things should be your goal, right? So your goal, which is essentially the hope, right? Which is essentially hope. You're here and you hope to achieve certain things. You hope to achieve a great rank, which will enable you to achieve certain things. It will enable you to maybe financially get stable, which is a very great incentive. It will enable you to sort of settle down. It might enable you to, finally propose to your girlfriend or boyfriend. So I'm pretty sure the rank itself has good number of outcomes. It will enable you to, maybe spend time in something else you wanted to do. Because we fundamentally believe in a lot of factors, which even internally Marrow, right? If you believe that making you achieve a goal, or making you great clinicians, making you do evidence-based practice has good outcomes, that is what actually motivates us, not the immediate revenue or the sales or anything out of it. Not that it's not a motivation, but that's not the primary thing. So for you to kind of get motivated, it's again internal. That's why the thing about the you, right? The thing about the you circle is that all of this is something you have to do. And my point here is that you need to literally write it down. It's very easy to think that, okay, fair enough, I need to do that. But a good hack for this is actually being very literal about it, and sort of writing it in a piece of paper and sort of reading it on every day. Right? So you kind of have a goal. Your goal is not the rank. Your goal is if you get a rank and if you join a PG and what comes, and you need to start thinking about that. You need to put visualizing about that, and you need to write it down and answer that, right? Now, I will just quickly try to answer a few questions before signing off. I'll just answer the recent ones. Tip on last 15 days revision. So it's essentially the same number of revisions. You might want to cram everything into 7 days, like medicine in a day. Quickly take your medicine book. So this is a good question, because you might want to plan for this 15-day revision as well, right? So while while your first revision or the second revision, you can sort of highlight the things which you feel you will anyway forget anyway, right? So that in your second revision, your eyes can actually simply stay onto that topics. So your revision days will start becoming smaller and smaller, right? So from 15 days, so 30 days to it will go for 15 days and even 7 days. So that means you need to build strategies to make your next set of revision efficient. So your entire bigger plan is to enable you to do a good revision, and your further revisions should enable you to do a greater revision and the final exam. QBank, enough, no need. So new AIMS questions will be added in the AIMS MOOC. Do we need to jot down each and every point from the QBank? Answer is no. If you have time, you can. Otherwise, just use bookmark. It's not going to be very efficient to write everything down. I will answer this question. How to increase efficiency? See, efficiency, I don't know you, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you might ask this question and different people would give you different answers. But end of the day, you need to look back and try to figure out something regarding your efficiency. I mean, that's the only thing I can actually say. Now, when to start the first revision? Whenever you have spent the 60% of time. Resetting QBank is not a good way to revise. You should just revise from your notes. I think answer how to cover QBank and videos, because watching videos, making notes, and then memorizing. I don't know. This is a very good. I mean, it's a standard question, right? How to cover videos and QBank, because watching videos, making notes, and then memorizing, it takes time. So not able to cover QBank. Now, one option is that you could have started earlier, right? So you could have started in February. Another option is that you work really hard. Like, you make sure you have 12 hours or 16 hours and you just make sure each 16 hours is spent. Because if there are, say, 600 hours of video which is excluding optional, that you can do the math, right? So that's one way to look at it. I used only custom modules to solve all subjects. Did I do it wrong? I wouldn't recommend that. You need to go topic wise, because it's a retaining and the storytelling is quite easy. In custom module, there is a sort of randomization which happens. But if you do QBank module wise, there is a journey which we take you through, like say it's rheumatoid arthritis, we take from one point to one concept to another concept. So at least for the rest of it, you can actually try doing from topic wise. ABC pattern will be added in a couple of weeks. Marrow 12-week planner, if you don't have. Why so brutal, sir? So I think the real brutality is not because of me or what I'm saying, right? So one thing I realize is that because of the lot of noise which is there online and even offline, you tend to get into a zone where you have so much information and so many sources. So you might feel, I would pay 5,000 rupees and buy this, and I might get something like that. I mean, even I'm guilty of that. I mean, I think an iPad will improve my productivity, and then I buy an iPad, then I feel this will improve my productivity, then I will buy that one. Essentially, it was I was a person who should be changing, right? So the brutality I want to tell is that there is always this temptation, there is always this overload, and you might really trying to escape from the reality. You might think, hey, if I get that, I might just get that. So that I think was actually doing. You have to do all subjects. I don't think you can subject. 3 revisions are good. Minimum 3, 2 to 3. How many questions should we attend as a mediocre student? So Jeet, the point is that the mediocre student, I mean, it all depends on if you're looking at NEET and getting a rank, right? You cannot just call yourself a mediocre student. Then you might as well not do it at all, right? So you have to be an above average, an exceptionally above average student to get a good rank. So you cannot start with a stepping stone that you are a mediocre student and how do I do? You just have to assume that I'm going to get that great rank. I'm going to do the, I want to be a surgery, PG, I want to do surgery. I mean, if this is my first week, you have to start visualizing, and you can't start calling from a mediocre point. So you just have to get out of it, because being a mediocre above average is not going to give you a result. Only exceptionally or really good is going to give you a result. So whatever works for you, start working towards that, but let's not start with the wrong foot. When should the course be completed? Depends on when you actually start. Marrow 12-week planner, it is sort of effective, but I wouldn't live by that. If you don't have any other option, probably you can actually do it. Why custom module 5 per day and 60 per month? It's primarily a technical limitation, but we have seen most of you guys are actually doing less than that. If you find more than that, we will increase it. Sir, table Pearl issue, okay. So now Pearl, there was some issue that The scrolling is an issue. See, the problem with that Pearl mobile screen is vertical, right? So we are trying to incorporate maximum information. So we would rather have you, scroll slightly tough rather than missing any kind of information, right? What about NEET and next exam? I really don't know. I don't think anybody knows, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to be a renaming, and it's essentially the same. But for a few years, I personally do not expect anything to happen. So maybe you can use it as an advantage. Final year I will discuss later. You can watch my old videos. This is for the 6 month plan. So I think I've answered most of the questions. So let me sign off here. I wish you all the best. Let's not get distracted. There's going to be so much distraction. Marrow is indirectly responsible for some of it, because online medium, the cost of interaction is quite less, right? For you to send a SMS or an email, or adding even recording content, more videos is quite easy. So there's always a temptation. So I'm pretty sure you're going to live in a very, very distractful few months. But stay strong, stay focused. Make sure you're not going too superficial. Make sure you're not making those silly mistakes. Track everything you do. Be very real about it. Do not try any escapism. Do grand test. Solve questions. Make sure AIMS is taken seriously, just like a very important exam. And after that, if you're not getting into AIMS, make sure you just go to the NEET with the same enthusiasm. All right. Thank you. Thanks for everyone.